The major forces that alter the velocity of the prevailing wind being advection acting in horizontal direction, pressure gradient force varying between high to low pressure, centrifugal force to be apparent inertial drift effect along a curve, Coriolis force being the apparent deflection towards right in northern hemisphere, while left in southern. Turbulent drag happens to be resistive obstruction. These influence the surroundings through geostrophic wind, which is a balance between Coriolis force and pressure gradient force moving parallel to Isobar. Cyclostrophic wind, that being a balance of centrifugal force and pressure gradient force. Gradient wind happens to be a balance among Coriolis force, centrifugal force, and pressure gradient force flowing along a curved isobar. Atmospheric boundary layer that considers a balance among Coriolis force, frictional drag, and pressure gradient force. Differential heating across the planet arises global wind patterns of primary, trade wind, westerlies, etc., secondary, cyclone, monsoon, etc., as well as tertiary air circulation, local wind, owing to air pressure and temperature imbalance. Incoming ultraviolet short radiation and outgoing long infrared radiation couldn't be nullified due to different types of topographic terrain inclination and different albedo of the surfaces. This results in a gain of radiation energy at the tropics differing away towards the temperate region further up to cooling at the poles. The energy surplus at the equator and deficit at the poles generates a three-cell, tricellular meridional air circulation model to distribute energy imbalance through three temperature-induced pressure belts being equatorial low-pressure belt, polar high-pressure belt of northern and southern hemisphere, as well as four dynamically induced pressure belts being subtropical high-pressure belt and subpolar low pressure belts of northern and southern hemisphere, along with seven other different temperature region, namely equatorial, intertropical, subtropical, tropical, temperate, torrid, and polar region. Hadley cell being a thermally direct circulation, as warm air rises and cold air sinks occurs up to 30-degree latitude of northern and southern hemisphere. Ferrel cell happens to be thermally indirect circulation, owing to cooler air rising and warm air sinking, extending through 30 to 60-degree latitude of northern and southern hemisphere. Polar cell occurring beyond 60 up to poles. Prof. Werner von Siemens, answering to Prof. Sprung's criticism, assumed such hypothesis. All winds caused by imbalance arising through indifferent equilibrium disturbances. These disturbances arise due to overheating of Earth's surface layers by insolation, owing to unsymmetrical cooling of hierarchical upper layers through radiation, and thereby air columns heaping due to obstructions. The disturbances being adjusted through ascending current, shaving accelerated momentum varying according to velocity increase proportionally to pressure diminution. The upward currents being in correspondence to equally great descending currents, shaving a velocity decrease corresponding to upward accelerated velocity. If overheating regional air locality is limited, a local upward current in vicinity to highest layers of air ascends, and whirlwinds appear along with inside spiral ascending currents and exterior similar descending spiral currents. The resulting dispersion of superfluous lower heating through which the adiabatic equilibrium is disturbed throughout the whole air column involved in whirling motion, if happens to be regional disturbance of indifferent or adiaptic equilibrium being highly extensive as that of tropical zone, then the temperature adjustment could no longer to be carried away, local ascending whirls, and a whirling current would then arise, having the entire atmosphere. These similar conditions being applied to these owing to local whirls of upward accelerated motion and retarded descents, such that the velocity at different attitudes arising from heat getting converted to work is approximately proportional to the prevailing pressure at that particular place. In consequence of the meridional motion produced and maintained through conversion of heat into work, the whole atmosphere across every latitude should rotate with same absolute velocity, approximately. Thus, the meridional currents generated by overheating mingled with the currents embracing the whole air circulation system, with the resulting disseminating temperature and humidity excess off torrid zone over the temperate and Arctic zones, thereby producing the prevailing winds. This is accomplished by generation of alternate local depressions, some barometric pressure elevations, through disturbance of indifferent equilibrium in the upper layers of the air. High and lows are a consequence of temperatures and velocities of upper currents.